You ever witness a slap that sounds so loud, you swear the whole world just stops breathing? That's what happened in that courtroom the day Karen, yeah, the self-appointed queen of the HOA, hauled off and smacked my son Evan so hard. His glasses flew clear across the floor and blood started pooling at the corner of his mouth. He just sat there, my kid, grown now, 46 and paralyzed since he was a teen, looking up at her like, "Is that all you've got?" And I swear, I felt something inside me snap, right then and there. But what happened next? That's what no one saw coming. $200,000 in damages. A federal probe. A whole neighborhood flipped upside down. Families fighting in the street. And the woman who thought she was above the law suddenly in handcuffs as my son, my quiet, stubborn, never-back-down son, wore the judge's robe and showed everyone what justice really looks like. But let me back up for a second, because the road to that moment started long before the courtroom exploded. See, this all started with one thing: lake access. That's simple, really. My family owned a slice of lakefront for over 60 years, ever since my old man bought it back in the 60s. The deed included a little-known easement, a permanent right-of-way down to the water. When my dad passed, he left that to Evan. And Evan, well, he wasn't about to give it up. Not even for Karen, who rolled into the neighborhood a few years ago with big hair, big ambitions, and an even bigger chip on her shoulder. Karen wanted that easement for her HOA, and she was willing to lie, harass, and throw money at lawyers until she got it. She pestered Evan nonstop, letters, fines, threats, you name it. When none of that worked, she cooked up a bogus lawsuit. That's why we landed in court. And you want to talk about a show? During cross-examination, Evan sat in his wheelchair, explaining to everyone in that packed room exactly how easements work, calm and steady, laying out the law in a way that made even the judge nod along. That's when Karen's face twisted up, like she realized her big plan was circling the drain. Next thing I know, she rockets out of her chair, heels snapping against the floor, storms right up to Evan, and just, crack, lets him have it. 3 rings on her fingers, too. So it wasn't just a slap, it was a gash. A little blood, and a whole lot of shock. She's screaming about pity games, spit flying, and her actual board members, start clapping like it's some reality show finale. I couldn't breathe. I saw red. The judge starts banging his gavel, shouting, but Karen's lost it. "You think that wheelchair makes you special?" she shrieks, fingers shaking. And what does my kid do? He looks her dead in the eye, blood running down his cheek, and says, "Are you finished?" Calm. Cold. She freezes. The room freezes. Then she tries to double down, but something shifted. Evan's not rattled. He just straightens his shirt, grabs his legal pad, and starts writing. Notes, timestamps, exact quotes. Some lawyer behind me whispers, he's not humiliated. He's preparing. Neighborhoods, bragging like it's some badge of honor. "The HOA is your landlord," she declares, staring at the judge. Some people actually clap for her. Others start walking out, disgusted. Then Karen's cousin, the HOA's lawyer, jumps up and confesses he's related to her, like he's proud of the nepotism. The gallery erupts. Other attorneys start pulling out their phones, probably thinking about reporting all this mess. Karen just keeps going, blaming Evan for bankrupting the neighborhood, forcing parents to drain their kids' college funds, making the elderly refinance their homes. The victim blaming is so wild, I can't even make sense of it. And still, some jurors are buying it. That's the scariest part. But you want to know the real twist? Evan is a licensed federal attorney. Harvard Law, top of his class, 20 years of civil rights work. He never mentioned it to anyone, not once. So when the judge finally collapses under the weight of the circus and has to recuse himself, calls for the senior-most attorney in the room, Evan quietly raises his hand. Karen's jaw hits the floor. The bailiff checks his credentials. And just like that, my son is the acting judge, blood still drying on his face. And you should have seen Karen's face. She goes from cocky to ghostly pale in a heartbeat. The rest of her board looks like they want to melt into their chairs. Evan puts on the robe, straightens up, and addresses the room. Not angry, not emotional, just the cool, precise voice of the law. He lays out the original deed, the legal proof of the easement, the emails showing Karen knew she'd lose before she ever filed suit, the fake evidence, the fraudulent petitions, the pattern of targeting disabled and minority families, the money Karen stole from her own neighbors. The whole place is dead silent. Then the crowd turns on Karen, shouting for their money back, accusing her of scamming them. The board tries to blame each other. Karen shrinks into her chair, sobbing. Evan drops the hammer. Perjury, assault, fraud, civil rights violations. He orders her arrested, orders the HOA dissolved, freezes their assets, refers everything to the feds. The bailiff snaps the cuffs on Karen. Evan dismisses the case with prejudice, making sure no one can ever try this again. The HOA's forced to pay back every penny to the families Karen hurt. She loses her house, gets banned from any HOA position for life. The federal investigation sweeps up a dozen other HOAs that used her methods. The neighborhood gets millions in restitution. But the best part? Evan gets appointed to the Federal Disability Rights Commission. The man Karen called a fraud becomes the country's top advocate for the rights she tried to destroy. The community, once so full of Karen's poison, becomes a model for real, inclusive living. Families that have been scared to open their doors finally breathe free. And as Evan rolled out of that courthouse, robes still on, a little dried blood on his face, I realized Karen hadn't destroyed him at all. She'd turned him into a legend. So what do you think? Who was in the right here, Karen or Evan? Ever seen an HOA get taken down like that? Drop your story in the comments. Hit that like button to send a message that bullies never win, and subscribe if you want more wild tales of justice and comeuppance. Because as long as there are bullies out there, somebody's got to keep telling these stories. See you next time. You ever walk out of a courthouse feeling like you just watched a tornado tear through your whole life, and then, somehow, there's sunlight on the other side? That's what it felt like when we rolled Evan down those marble steps. The crowd parting around us, reporters shouting questions, neighbors looking shell-shocked, some of them hugging us, others just kind of slipping away, eyes down, not sure what to say after. Cheering for the wrong team all these years. I'll be honest, I didn't even know how to feel. Proud, exhausted, angry, relieved, all at once. Maybe you know what I mean. But see, real life doesn't just tie itself up in a neat bow because a judge slammed the gavel and the villain got carted off in handcuffs. No, real life keeps throwing curveballs, even after you win. That very night, our street was buzzing, some folks celebrating, others muttering about ruined property values and who's going to fix the HOA mess now. A couple of Karen's old buddies went radio silent, took their flags down, and started avoiding us at the mailbox. But you know what? Most people were just plain embarrassed. One by one, they started knocking on our door, hands twisting their caps. Voices soft, saying, "We didn't know. We're sorry." That first weekend, Evan set up folding chairs on the front lawn. Yep, the same lawn Karen used to send warning letters about, and just sat there, greeting folks as they walked by. Little by little, people started dropping in. One family brought him a home-baked pie. Old Mr. Sweeney, who hadn't spoken to us in 3 years, shuffled up with a six-pack and just sat there next to Evan in total silence, both of them watching the sunset over the lake. Sometimes that's all you need, right? No big speech, just knowing you're not alone. Now, here's where things take a turn nobody expected. Federal investigators started calling. They wanted to talk, not just about Karen, but about every HOA she'd ever been involved with. Turns out, she'd pulled this same act in a dozen other communities. For years, the news blew up, Karen's mugshot all over the internet, hashtags trending, her name getting roasted in ways that even I have to admit were kind of hilarious. You know the type, memes of her with HOA Queen, retired, written underneath, people swapping horror stories in the comments. It was cathartic, sure, but also kind of sad. Karen had built her whole life on controlling people, and now, nothing but burned bridges and lawsuits chasing her across state lines. Meanwhile, Evan, he got calls from lawyers, disability advocates, even a congresswoman who wanted him to come speak about HOA reform. And here's the twist. Evan didn't gloat, didn't brag. He just got to work. Set up a community legal aid night every Thursday, started coaching a group of local kids on debate, helped the neighborhood draft new bylaws, real ones that protect people, not punish them. Suddenly, folks who used to cross this time without corruption. Yeah, that lasted about a week. Turns out, When you've been exposed on national TV for harassing a disabled neighbor and blowing hundreds of thousands in community funds, people get a little skittish about signing their names to anything. Funny how that works. Still, Evan kept his head down, kept doing the work, and, bit by bit, things got better. That winter. Signs, no more shouting matches. For the first time in years, you could feel the tension melt away. One night, just after New Year's, I caught Evan sitting by the water, Buddy the golden retriever snoozing at his side. He was quiet, staring at the lake like he was seeing it for the first time in years. I sat down next to him and asked, "So what now, son?" He just smiled that tired, peaceful smile and said, "Now we make sure nobody ever goes through this again. Not here. Not anywhere." That's the thing about justice. It doesn't end with a verdict or an arrest or even a big, viral story. It's the everyday stuff. The showing up. The forgiving. The rebuilding. The refusing to stay quiet, even when the mob is loudest. And yeah, I know there are still Karens out there, hiding behind rules and bylaws, waiting to push around someone they think can't fight back. Maybe you're dealing with one right now. Maybe you're sitting there thinking, it's just not worth the fight. But I'm telling you it is. It's always worth it. Because sometimes the quietest people in the room turn out to be the strongest. Sometimes, the ones everyone counted out are the ones who change everything. So what do you think? Ever had to stand up to a bully and watch the whole world shift? Drop your own story down below. Let's hear it. Like if you believe everyone deserves a fair shot, no matter what the rules say. And if you want more stories about fighting for what's right, hit subscribe and stick around. Because the fight isn't over, not by a long shot. And hey, next time you hear someone talking tough about community standards, maybe just remember, sometimes the best way to fix a broken system is to drag it into the light and start again. See you out there.